parents insisted, "This is still your home." And I looked at my children, knowing I'd built a different version of that word than anything contained inside these yellowing walls. My son's fingers were twisting the fringe on my sleeve like he always does when he's overwhelmed. My daughter's eyes flicking between my face and my parents like she was trying to figure out which adult she was meant to agree with. The living room smelled like dust and oven cleaner. The same floral curtains were half-drawn even though it was sunny outside. A rerun of some loud game show blared from the TV no one was actually watching. My dad's hand thumped the arm of his recliner when he said it, like he was pinning the sentence to the floor. I swallowed and felt it all the way down, my throat suddenly dry. "We're just visiting," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "Our home is across town." I forced a little laugh that sounded wrong in my own ears. My mom leaned forward on the couch, hands clasped like we were in some negotiation. "You know what we mean," she said. "This will always be your home. You don't have to act like some guest. Take your shoes off, for goodness sake. You're making us feel like strangers." My kids still had their sneakers on too, sitting perched on the edge of the couch like they weren't sure how much space they were allowed to take up. It was a Sunday afternoon, first one we'd spent at my parents' house in almost a year. I'm 37F, married, 2 kids, 7M and 10F. And this whole mess kind of started when I realized I'd rather spend holidays in our tiny rental with mismatched plates than here with the good china and the constant hum of tension. I didn't plan to go low contact. It wasn't some dramatic vow. It was more like my body slowly refusing to cooperate every time I put visit mom and dad in my calendar. Headaches, sudden errands, the kind of tired that made standing in their doorway feel like wading through mud. Growing up, this place was my home in the literal sense. Same tan carpet that left those weird lines whenever mom vacuumed. Same lumpy sofa. Same kitchen with the cabinet that never shut properly. There are photos of me on the walls. Toddler with jam on my face. 7-year-old with missing front teeth. Awkward teenager in an ill-fitting formal dress. From the outside, it looks fine. Normal. Lower middle-class family in a slightly dated house. No holes in the walls, no police calls, no bruises to point at. The wounds were quieter than that. Home was my dad's boots on the lino at 6 p.m. The way the air pressure in the whole house seemed to change with each step. Home was mom's voice going sweeter, tighter. "How was your day?" Like she was poking a bear with a soft stick. Home was learning which questions made him slam his fork down and which ones made him tell stories instead, and keeping the dangerous ones folded up silently in my head. Home was being 13 and having my first crush text me, and when I smiled at my phone, Dad grabbed it, read it, and said in front of my cousins, "Look at Miss Popular over here. Don't get pregnant." Everyone laughed. I smiled too, cheeks burning so hot I could feel my heartbeat in them. Mom said, "She knows better," but it came out sounding like a warning, not a defense. Home was the time I cried because Dad called me Thunder Thighs when he saw me in shorts, and Mom hissed in the bathroom afterwards, "He's just joking. Don't start drama. If you don't like it, lose some weight." Home was also spaghetti on Sundays and my mom rubbing my back when I was sick and my dad teaching me how to ride a bike in the park. I've spent most of my adult life trying to decide which bits count more. When I moved out at 19, my parents made it clear they saw it as a phase. They didn't say that directly, of course. They said things like, "You'll see how hard it is in the real world," and "Don't come crying to us when the bills pile up." They were offended when I didn't come home every weekend. They called constantly. If I didn't answer within an hour, I'd get, "Busy now? Too important for your parents?" I didn't know then that not everyone felt their stomach drop when they saw Mom on their screen. I thought I was a bad daughter, constantly failing a test everyone else seemed to pass effortlessly. Therapy entered the chat after my son was born. Suddenly the word home felt like a loaded gun I was holding in shaky hands. I'd be rocking this tiny, pink, furious human at 2 a.m., my husband snoring softly beside us, and my brain would replay moments from my childhood in painful HD. Dad yelling so loud the neighbors shut their windows. Mom sobbing that she was done, and then making dinner anyway. Me, age maybe 10, standing in the hallway listening, telling myself, If I'm quiet enough, they'll stop. I couldn't shake the fear that I was going to unconsciously recreate that. I love my kids in a way that makes my chest physically ache, and still the thought snuck in, what if love isn't enough to stop me from becoming them? So I found a psychologist. Her room smelled like eucalyptus and had those soft chairs you can tuck your feet up in. First session, she asked about my parents, and I launched into my usual script. They're complicated. They had it rough growing up. They did their best. My dad has a temper, but he worked hard. My mom can be harsh, but she's also really generous. I'm probably just sensitive. She listened and then said, very calmly, what does home feel like in your body when you think about visiting them? I opened my mouth to say comforting, and instead heard myself say, like I can't breathe properly. That freaked me out enough that I didn't go back for a month. But the thought kept gnawing at me, especially when my daughter started asking questions. The first time we brought the kids here, when they were old enough to actually remember, my daughter was 5. Dad made a joke about her having more rolls than a bakery when she reached for a second biscuit. My girl laughed because it was said with a smile and everyone else laughed. But later that night, brushing her teeth in our tiny townhouse bathroom, she asked, am I fat? In this small voice that made my soul shrivel. I crouched down so we were eye level, toothbrush foam at the corner of her mouth. You're strong and healthy and perfect, I said. Granddad thinks he's funny. That joke wasn't kind. A part of me wanted to text my mother immediately. Don't let him talk about her body. Another part of me remembered the bathroom when I was 13. He's just joking, don't start drama. I told Laura about it at our next appointment. I was still half defending them, half horrified. It wasn't that bad, I said. He wasn't screaming or anything. It's just a stupid joke. I survived. She tapped her pen on her notebook thoughtfully. You did survive, she said. But do you want your daughter to? I frowned. Obviously, I want her to survive. I mean, she clarified gently, do you want her to have to survive her home? Or do you want her to feel safe in it? That question sat in my brain like a rock for weeks. Back to this Sunday. We hadn't been here since last Christmas. And even that had been an awkward 2-hour cameo punctuated by Dad complaining that my husband doesn't say much, and Mom pushing second helpings on the kids after I'd told them they'd had enough. After that, I'd slowed down the visits until we should catch up soon turned into we haven't seen you in months. Then my mom texted, the kids are growing up without knowing their grandparents. This is still your home. You're punishing us for nothing. Guilt is a powerful drug. I said yes to this lunch partly because I felt it and partly because I wanted to prove to them, to myself, that I wasn't cutting them off, that I could handle controlled contact like a normal adult. So here we were. My parents insisting this was still my home. My kids perched like timid birds. My husband in the kitchen getting cornered by Dad about football. This is where you grew up, Mom went on. Your bed is still here. Your posters are still on the wall. That's true. My bedroom looks like a museum exhibit curated by someone who wanted the before picture to stay put. The Spice Girls poster is still on the wardrobe. The shelf of YA novels I escaped into is dustier but untouched. The floral duvet that smells faintly of old perfume. If my parents ever understood that that room was less sanctuary and more bunker, they never said. I looked at my son, who had slid closer to me on the couch until his hip pressed into my thigh. He doesn't like loud noises or people talking over each other. My parents do both as a default setting. He was chewing on his bottom lip the way he does when he's overwhelmed, eyes fixed on the TV even though he wasn't really watching. Are you okay, Bug? I murmured. He nodded too fast. Yeah. Then, quieter. When are we going home? The word landed heavy in me. Home. Our actual house. The rental with the too small kitchen and the chalk drawings on the fence out back. The place where we have no yelling, as a literal rule stuck on the fridge in my daughter's handwriting. The place where, when someone apologizes, it's not followed by, but you. In a bit, I whispered back. Soon. Mom saw the exchange and pounced. See? She said. He thinks this is just some place he has to visit. It breaks my heart. Your home is here too, sweetheart, she added to him. Grandma's house is your home. My son looked panicked, like there was a right answer and he didn't know it. He glanced at me, then at her. My chest tightened. I felt suddenly, fiercely protective. His home is where he feels safe, I said before I could stop myself. Mom's eyes snapped to mine. And you're saying he's not safe here? She demanded. I hesitated. Everyone's eyes were on me now. My daughter, my son, my mother with her injured bird look, my dad half leaning in from the doorway. Years of training screamed at me. Say no. Smooth it over. You're overreacting. I'm saying, I began slowly, that home isn't just where you grew up. It's how you're treated there. Dad snorted. For God's sake, he said. What have you been reading? Home is your family, end of story. I thought of the kids' bedroom at our place, fairy lights strung along the wall, a stack of picture books by the bed. I thought of my husband sitting on the floor with them last week, playing some complicated game involving Lego and dinosaurs and absolutely no yelling. I thought of myself, sitting on the couch after they were asleep, realizing my shoulders were actually touching the backrest instead of hovering near my ears. Home is where people don't call you names, I said. My voice was shaking now, but I forced myself to keep going. Home is where no one reads your messages out loud to the room for a laugh. Home is where I'm sad isn't met with others have it worse. That's what I'm trying to build for them. My mom stared at me like I'd grown an extra head. We never called you names, she said, offended. My daughter tilted her head. Granddad calls me Chunky Monkey, she said, completely guileless. You know that feeling when the air gets sucked out of a room? That? My mom's eyes flashed to Dad. He shrugged. It's a joke, he said. She laughs. Do you like it? I asked my daughter gently. She considered, chewed her lip. I don't know, she said. It makes my tummy feel weird. That tiny sentence punched me in the gut. My tummy had felt weird for most of my childhood. I just didn't have the words for it. Maybe we find a different nickname, I said, pulling her closer. Dad rolled his eyes. This is what I mean, he said to my mom. Soft. The world's gone soft. We survived worse. I know you did, I said, and I probably meant it more than he realized. His dad was an actual alcoholic who threw plates. I've heard the stories. I've seen the way his face changes when he talks about his childhood. That mixture of pride and something more jagged. But my kids don't have to survive what I survived to prove they're tough. My mom's voice went quieter, more dangerous. So what? She said. You're better than us because you don't yell? Here it was, the accusation underneath everything. I took a breath. I could feel my hands trembling. I'm not better, I said. I'm just doing it differently. For what? She pressed. So they grow up thinking you were perfect and we were monsters? I glanced at my kids. They were watching, wide-eyed, taking all this in. Another flash of clarity. This conversation wasn't just about me and my parents. It was part of the story my kids will tell about their home. About me. I tell them you did your best, I said. That much was true. And I also tell them it's okay to say when something hurts, even if it's from someone they love. My son's hand found mine under the table. His fingers were small and a little sticky. I squeezed gently. We never meant to hurt you, Mom said. We might have made mistakes, but we gave you everything. Roof over your head. Food. We didn't abandon you. That's more than we got. There's the bar again. Not abandoning equals great parenting. I'm grateful for what you gave me, I said. I'm also dealing with things now that came from how we did conflict. From how we talked or didn't talk about feelings. My kids don't have to inherit all of that. Dad shook his head and went back to leaning in the doorway like he was watching a show he didn't like but couldn't turn off. Mom wiped the corner of her eye with the heel of her hand in this sharp, irritated way she has. So what exactly are you saying? She asked. Because all I'm hearing is you blaming us. I looked down at my son, then at my daughter. at their sneakers on the carpet, the way they were half turned toward me like satellites. "I'm saying this house is where I grew up," I said. "It's not my home anymore. My home is the one I've made with them. Where they don't have to guess whether it's a good night or a bad night. Where no one weaponizes you should be grateful. Where they can say, I don't like that nickname, and we stop using it." My voice cracked on the last bit. Silence. The TV game show audience hooped at something in the background. "That's very nice for you," Mom said finally, her tone icy. "Just remember whose shoulders you climbed on to get there." I wanted to bite back that standing on someone's shoulders doesn't obligate you to let them keep their hands around your throat. Instead, I just said, "I do remember. That's why I still bring them here, even when I'm anxious for 3 days beforehand. But if coming here means unlearning all the things we're teaching them at home, I'm going to have to rethink it." "You'd keep them from us?" she asked, outraged but also scared, if I'm honest. "I'd keep them from situations that hurt them," I said. "If you can't respect the way we're trying to do things, then yeah, we'll take a step back." Dad muttered something about dramatic and disappeared into the kitchen, the tap turning on too loud. Mom stared at me like she didn't recognize me. Maybe she didn't. The version of me that sat at this table for years would have folded by now. Would have said, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean it like that," and offered to do the dishes to make up for it. Instead, I turned to my kids. "Hey," I said, forcing a smile that felt less fake the longer I held it. "How about we head home and make cookies? We can call Grandma later when everyone's calmer." "Can we put sprinkles?" my son asked, immediately invested. "Obviously," I said. My daughter looked between me and my mom like she was assessing risk. "Are you and Grandma mad?" she whispered. I thought about lying, about saying, "No, everything's fine." I thought about how many times I heard that as a kid when it was clearly not fine, how it taught me to doubt my own senses. "We're upset," I said slowly. "But grown-ups can be upset and still love each other. We just need a break." She nodded, absorbing that. "Like when me and Liam fight and you say we have to go to our rooms for quiet time," she said. "Exactly," I said. Mom made a strangled noise. "So now we're children?" she snapped. I stood up, heart pounding. "I'm not doing this in front of them," I said. "We can talk later if you want. Or not. That's your choice. But I'm taking them home." "You're overreacting," she said. "You always were so dramatic." I felt the words hit and slide off like rain on a jacket I'd finally remembered to put on. Still stung, but it didn't soak through as much. "Maybe," I said. "I'm okay with that if it means they grow up knowing home is supposed to feel safe." We left. It wasn't a dramatic storm out. No slamming doors. The kids said polite goodbyes, collected their drawings from the coffee table. Mom hugged them a bit too tight, telling them, "Remember Grandma loves you so much." Like I was trying to erase that. I hugged her too. She held on longer than usual, her hand flat on my back in this stiff, unfamiliar way. "Don't keep them away," she whispered into my hair. "Then don't make me choose between their well-being and your feelings," I whispered back before I could second-guess it. On the drive home, my husband kept his hand on my knee at every red light. We didn't talk much. The kids argued about which cookies we'd make, and I let their voices wash over me like a soundtrack. I noticed my shoulders slowly dropping, my jaw unclenching. Later that night, after flour and sugar and melted butter and the inevitable kitchen disaster, after baths and stories and both kids asleep in their beds, I sat on our sagging couch and really looked at our living room. The IKEA bookshelf crammed with books and half-finished craft projects. The scuffed coffee table with board game dice under it. The crooked gallery wall of kids' art. This is home. Not because it's perfect. It's not. I snap sometimes. I get tired and say the wrong thing. I've already apologized to my children more times than my parents ever did to me. But that's part of it. Home here isn't about pretending no one ever gets hurt. It's about what happens after. I thought about my parents' living room. The way nothing ever changes there, not the furniture, not the dynamic, not the script. I thought about my mom's face when she said, "This is still your home." like she was trying to will it into truth. She's not entirely wrong. That house made me. It's the reason I flinch at certain tones and why I'm hyper-aware of my kids' facial expressions. It's the reason I second-guess every boundary I set. It's also the reason I care so much about building something different. So when my parents insist, "This is still your home," I can see what they're really asking. Stay the same. Don't outgrow us. Don't make us look at ourselves. And when I look at my children, I know what I'm really answering with every small, quiet decision. No, my home is here, with you, in the way we speak to each other, in the apologies we make, in the safety we try imperfectly to create. It's not about being better than them. It's about breaking rank with the version of home that hurt me, even if that means standing alone in their living room sometimes, shoes still on, kids' hands gripping my sleeve, choosing to walk back out and go to the place I've built from scratch.